Death by overdose. It's a devastating epidemic infecting our communities.
They're in this lost world. They feel like they have nothing to contribute to society.
The opioid crisis destroys lives and scars families forever.
On the morning that I found my daughter, my 16-year-old had to come in and help me flatten her out so that I could do CPR on her.
It's one of the biggest public health and safety issues we face.
What scares me is the cost to human life.
Addiction's consuming power
Picked up, and I never put it down.
does not discriminate.
I've seen it all the way from business executive type people to homeless people. I mean, there's no limits to it.
Overdoses keep EMS crews rushing from call to call on a mission to save lives.
Some of them don't realize that they died. They're like, no, I didn't die. And we have to be like, yes, someone done CPR on you.
Many addicts fiend for a high instead of getting treatment.
When people say, well, I know what I took and I know how much, you don't know anything. You literally don't know anything at all.
There's determination to stop the problem, but the fight isn't easy.
If I don't do what I'm trained to do, this person probably will die.
Opioids are deadly, they're destructive, and there's a dire need to put an end to the TRIAD opioid crisis.
Dependencies on drugs like painkillers and heroin take over and leave people craving more.
The addiction and opioid abuse is a serious problem our emergency crews face almost every single day.
And that's why tonight we're dedicating the next 30 minutes talking about the opioid crisis and solutions with some of the people hit the hardest.
WFMY News 2's Erica Stapleton hit the streets with EMS. It was a night near death for several people caught in the dangerous web of the opioid crisis.
It's Thursday afternoon in Winston-Salem.
Just watch out for mop looking. Go this one.
I'm about to embed for 12 hours overnight with Forsyth County EMS, tracking overdoses.
We're more than just ambulance drivers. I think that's the one thing that irritates our profession more than anything, is we get called ambulance drivers, and we're not just ambulance drivers. We can handle anything from bringing life in or being there when someone is dying. There's been times where the call for us to come out was too late for us to even do anything, and the patient has already succumbed to the overdose. The heroin in the last, about 2 years, I would say, has went up drastically.
Some of the people I've talked to said that you can't describe it. They call it the heroin hug. And they said, you know, the first time you do it, you just get this secure feeling, it's almost like a warm embrace, like a hug from your grandma, is the way it's been explained to me. And they said once you feel that, you crave it constantly. I've seen it all the way from business executive type people to homeless people. I mean, there's no limits to it. And you know, it's sad when you look in the eyes of a 26-year-old and they feel like they have nothing left. They feel like it doesn't matter, that nobody cares if they live or die.
Listen to that. Nobody cares if they live or die. That's how addiction grips the mind. Not that long ago, it used to be that overdose calls were few and far between. Now, they're routine for first responders. And if you ask about them, they'll have a story for you, or two, or three. It's not stopping.
A woman who overdosed in a gas station parking lot with all of her children in the car, and she had 4, and they were all crying hysterically, and it broke my heart.
Every truck on this shift, it was like overdose after overdose after overdose. It was a bad batch of heroin that hit the streets in High Point, sold to whoever, ended up in Forsyth County. And we were like, my gosh, not another one. Oh, what is going on here? I mean, we couldn't get a handle on it.
A 27-year-old male, possibly unconscious after an overdose on heroin and possibly fentanyl as well. It's 4 PD is on scene.
We don't invite ourselves to these calls. We are there because we've been dispatched to these calls. So we come in with the patient's best interest in mind, or the family member, and whatever the situation is, we're there to help mitigate that situation.
I can't take you with me inside that house where the overdose is happening, but I can walk you through what I'm seeing. We first go inside, I go upstairs, there's police and firefighters already there. I look down and I see a woman carrying 2 kids. So there are kids in the house. We learn that the guy who overdosed, his girlfriend actually gave him Narcan. Because she gave it to him so quickly, that's probably the reason he's alive right now. But he's refusing to go to the hospital. He's refusing that treatment. The victim told the paramedics that he had just taken some Tylenol and that's why his eyes looked the way they did. But the paramedics know better. They know that he used some drug, and then an officer actually found a syringe and then another bag with white powder in it. That's when people start freaking out. No one wants to get in trouble for any of this, but this guy really needs help. And again, he's refusing treatment. The paramedics want to give him more Narcan, but he doesn't want that either. We leave the house with the victim alive for now, but they're worried that the drugs he took earlier might kick back in and really wish that he had taken that extra dose of Narcan.
I mean, typically if they're not going to go to the hospital, they don't get that charged up. It's usually, no, I don't want to go, and they'll take me by car or whatever. But that was extreme.
Yeah, bystanders really ratcheted that up.
Yeah, bystanders complicate things a lot.
Yes, they certainly did.
But I guess there's nothing else you can do.
No.
We did everything we could. We had PD on scene. We had family try to convince him. We called the medical director to talk with them and let them know of the situation. I mean, we can't kidnap anyone. If he's oriented, he can refuse, unfortunately.
So what typically goes through my mind is this person, if I don't do what I'm trained to do, this person probably will die. And when you're at that moment in time, you're going to follow your protocols and you're going to give the medication, but also on a personal level, it's as you're pushing that medication, you're thinking, this is going to save this person's life.
This isn't like in a movie where someone just snaps out of it. Depending on the person, it could take about 5 to 10 minutes to wake up. And when they do, it's probably not going to be pretty. Think about it. They were just jolted from a high, and also death. They'll probably feel sick, angry, confused.
The experience that you saw is not necessarily the same for everyone. Some people require CPR, some people never revive. So it just depends on how much they've taken and what it's cut with.
Or you have a patient look up at you and say, how bad was I this time? And you say, well, you're breathing about 6 times a minute, you were grayish blue color, you were just about to die. And they go, oh. And then you say, have you done this before? Oh yeah, I've been Narcan before, but I've never been this bad.
Well, Erica rode around with Forsyth County EMS all night long. What was that experience like for you?
Honestly, it was eye-opening because it's not a perspective you typically get to see. Mm-hmm. And the thing that struck me the most just about that particular incident that we just saw was that people refuse help. Like, it literally comes to your doorstep, but it's something that people are afraid to take. It's something that's hard to take because, as Scott said, I think the line that gets everyone is heroin hug. It's a comfort. Using drugs is comfortable, and not using drugs is uncomfortable. And if you had to choose between the two in your mind, you want to go where it's comfortable, especially when your mind's been gripped by addiction. So it's a reality that they see, not just in that case, but in a lot of cases. And it's really sad, but I think understanding that perspective is a way to kind of move forward and trying to figure out a solution, because unless you really see how, again, addiction kind of controls you, then there's really no way to go forward.
And we're taught in journalism to make sure that you're disconnected from the story so you can tell it objectively. Was it difficult to do here, seeing what you saw?
Well, I think, honestly, in a way, this is objective, just because this is, with my own eyes, that's what I'm seeing. And you guys, the night did not end there. We kept going. It was a few more calls that we went on, and honestly, it's something that you definitely should see. Check it out.
This call is for an older woman. She says she has chest pains, but then goes on to say she hurts all over. They try and give her baby aspirin to help, but she won't swallow them. She says she hasn't eaten all day. Her pain now, she says, is 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. It turns out she was so dehydrated that they actually couldn't put an IV in her, so we had to rush over here, and she's getting the help right now.
And just like our first guy, when you look at her pupils were a 2 millimeter, so that means they're pinpoint. Your pupils aren't pinpoint, mine aren't pinpoint, so hers are pinpoint for a reason, because of the pain meds that she was given at the nursing facility.
So you don't have to be completely zonked out
No,
to be overdosed. You just have to be.
Right, it hadn't affected her respiratory yet, but just her general appearance, her sluggishness, repeating the same thing, saying she hurt all over, her pain level she was saying and what she was presenting with didn't match. But the pinpoint pupils is pretty much, I mean, you can't fake that. It affects us. You know, I firmly believe that the human brain is not designed to see, hear, smell, or taste the things that we have to deal with. You definitely see the other side of society that you don't see like anywhere else. The traumas, the blood, the guts, the whatevers. That to me, that doesn't really get to me. It's the after the fact. And then you sit back and you go, wow, I just did this, and this, and I just saw this, and this, and whew. But then you don't know the ending.
You have to deal with those kinds. If you don't, it's gonna bother you as time goes on. The frequency of seeing people doing things to themselves, doing things to each other, the violent stuff we get to see does have an effect on fire, police, and EMS. You gotta have some sort of outside activity other than EMS to de-stress yourself.
What's that for you?
I enjoy hunting and fishing, spending time with my family. I would say my brother's probably my biggest release. He used to be a fire chief up in New York.
You can kind of lose touch with quote unquote normal, whatever that may mean. You just have to find coping mechanisms to get through it. So I'll go home, and if I had a bad shift and you know, my kids are at school, my wife's gone to work, and I can't talk to them about this stuff anyway, but the one person I can talk to who is not going to judge me and is guaranteed not to tell anybody anything is my horse. Standing there and just taking a breath of my horse's neck, and it's like when I exhale, it just, and it all just kind of flows away.
All right, so I just finished the 12-hour shift, and it's honestly a lot to completely digest because they run on so many different calls, and I have such a new perspective on what paramedics do. They have to know exactly what to do at exactly the right time. You're thinking a mile a minute, but you have to be precise because people's lives depend on talking to people, to making them feel comfortable once they were in their care. So again, a whole new appreciation for what paramedics do and just the way they respond and have to kind of compress everything in and take multiple calls a night and just know how to react to multiple different types of calls at any given moment.
We're seeing the opioid crisis take hold here in the Triad. In nearly every county in our area, EMS responded to hundreds of overdose calls every year.
Hey, here's a look at some of the numbers in our area. Let's start in Greensboro. Last year, EMS crews responded to 351 opioid overdoses. 63 of them resulted in deaths. Crews gave Narcan 221 times.
So far this year, Greensboro officials responded to 337 overdose calls using Narcan 222 times. 49 people died from overdoses.
Last year in High Point, crews responded to 376 overdose calls. This year, that number is 235.
In Randolph County, the numbers went up from 2017. There were 316 overdose calls, 282 Narcan uses, and 27 overdose deaths last year.
So far this year, crews responded to 372 overdose calls, used Narcan 148 times, but 34 people died from overdoses. Okay, you heard the numbers. Now we want you to hear about the impact.
Personal stories of the devastation linked to the opioid crisis coming up.
People are dying, families are being torn apart, community budgets are straining.
He never meant to kill himself. He never meant to do this to us, to his family.
I had essentially committed suicide. I just was not physically dead yet.
He said that the person had toothpaste coming out of his mouth. That was his perception of the person foaming at the mouth. And when a child witnesses that, that's something that he'll never forget.
It's like you're in an ocean, somebody drops you off in the middle of the ocean and you can't swim and you're going under and you have that panic of needing air, and if you don't get the air you're going to die. And that's kind of what it's like for somebody who's addicted.
Personally, I had no idea that, people got well when I was using. I don't think a lot of people do.
Opioid addiction can take over lives and lead to a devastating end. And joining us now is Claudia Marini, Forsyth County Sheriff-elect Bobby Kimbrough Jr., as well as Scott Haithcock with Forsyth County Emergency Services.
All three have personal stories of how the opioid crisis impacted and still impacts their lives today. Claudia, your daughter battled addiction. Can you tell us her story?
Madison started using around the age of 14, believe it or not. And peer pressure and some friends that introduced her was probably the main way she started. She battled for a lot of years, and she lost that battle when she was just 22, which was 22 months ago. So not very long ago. She was brilliant, good student, straight A student. She was in the early college high school program. A singer, soccer player. She was, star goalie of her soccer team. Not what you typically think of for somebody who is battling drugs and addiction. And we went through lots of different things to get her help. A lot of resources weren't available, and unfortunately, again, she just lost that battle, and it's unfortunate. She was wonderful.
Mr. Kimbrough, your life and the lives of your children have been deeply impacted by the opioid crisis. Tell us more about your wife.
Well, my wife was a beautiful woman, highly educated, worked in the medical profession, RN. It was a shock to me when I found out what the cause of death was. It was a shock to our family and everyone. It has changed my life because it's something that you never forget. You go back in your mind and you say, what did I do wrong? Where did I make a mistake at? What didn't I see? You go through the shoulda, woulda, wish I coulda, and you have to pick up, but you never forget it. You just learn to live with it. It has changed my life to the point to where it's become a personal fight to educate people about it, because it's not a rich, poor, black, white. It's a life and death thing, and that's something that we've got to realize, that it has no respecter of none of the above.
And Scott, as a paramedic with Forsyth County Emergency Services, you stare addiction and overdoses in the face every single day. How often do you see these cases?
The number of cases that I've personally been on just within the last week is 4 to 5. The frequency of overdoses is becoming more and more. It's not getting any less. The problems that we're seeing is it's laced with multitude of different drugs, which is causing even more issues. And the big thing is everybody you know either is dealing with it or knows somebody who's dealing with this crisis. Claudia and I have known each other since the 3rd grade, you know, and I've not dealt with an opioid crisis, but I know someone who has. That's as real as it gets. And now I know 2 people that have on a personal level because I just met him this evening. But it is a crisis, and we need to start having real conversations, and we need to start facing this head on and educating the children and educating the adults about the dangers associated with it, because it's not going to get any better until we do.
What would you say to someone who might not believe that addiction is happening in their area?
Wake up.
I mean, the numbers, if you just look at the numbers, you talk about last year, over 72,000 people died of a drug overdose, opioid drug overdose in this country. And you think about it related to a war, the Vietnam War, we lost, what, 52,000 U.S. soldiers. And you think we've exceeded that, and we're on track to almost double that in 2018.
Talk to any EMS professional, talk to anybody, and I'm just one voice and one face of a multitude sea of people that are working this every day. Everything from the telecommunicator that takes the call, to the first responders, to the firemen, to the law enforcement, to the paramedics, to the people in the hospitals. It's affecting everybody in some way, shape, or form. And there are plenty of us out there. Just ask one of us and they will tell you.
We appreciate all of you for being here this evening and sharing your stories with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, it's stories like these that we can only hope resonate with you at home and help people fully understand the devastating impact of the opioid crisis. Do you have leftover pills or old pills? Don't keep them. Just throw them away. Excuse me, don't just throw them away. How you should destroy them is coming up next.
Right now, researchers in North Carolina are working to make opioids that are not addictive. Scientists at UNC's School of Medicine are studying how opioids react with the brain. They hope to design a medicine to treat pain without possibly causing addiction. Researchers think this information will lead to new, safer drugs that do not cause dependence or overdoses.
In Greensboro, there's a physical therapy clinic using virtual reality as a way to fight opioid addiction. Patients at Breakthrough Physical Therapy learn how pain affects the body using stories in a visual manner. The idea is if patients can understand the concept of pain, they'll be able to control it better with their minds and reduce the need to take medication. Mindfulness techniques like breathing are also a part of therapy.
You know, we're taking VR, we're taking new information and taking some old, breathing is old and mindfulness is really old, but it's new to medicine in terms of using it for pain.
Breakthrough in Greensboro is the only physical therapy group in the country offering this type of therapy. To help combat the opioid epidemic, Governor Roy Cooper signed the HOPE Act into law over the summer.
HOPE stands for Heroin and Opioid Prevention Enforcement. The law gives law enforcement access to prescription drug records for their investigations and invests millions in treatment programs.
There is hope for anyone struggling with opioid addiction.
On WFMYnews2.com, we've linked you to several resources to guide you or a loved one towards treatment. Thank you for watching this special report on the opioid crisis in the Triad.
If you need help, please reach out to someone. Have a good night.